You are now watching On Point, a news and public affairs show from California State University, Northridge.
Hello and welcome everyone. I'm your host, Siobhan Peart, and joining me today is Kevin Orantes, a real estate agent serving Los Angeles County, and Airbnb host, María Camacho. And today's topic is Airbnb, temporary paradise or permanent problem. Today we will explore how the vacation rental company has changed the housing market. By now, everyone has probably heard of Airbnb, whether they've actually stayed in one or not. It's an alternative way to find a place to vacation and has taken the entire world by storm. The company acts as a broker for homeowners who want to rent out their houses for temporary vacation-related stays, and customers are able to stay in the house for the duration of their outing instead of a hotel. As of 2023, there are more than 6 million Airbnb listings spread across 10,000 cities worldwide. Los Angeles alone is home to more than 23,000 of those listings. However, Airbnb wasn't always the powerhouse that it is now. The San Francisco-based company started back in 2008 under the name Air Bed and Breakfast, but it only started to gather attention in 2016. Between 2015 and 2016, the company's popularity skyrocketed and its profits increased by 80%. Like many businesses, Airbnb took a sizable hit due to COVID-19. With fewer people traveling, the enterprise experienced a 30% revenue loss. Despite financial setbacks, the company continues to operate in 191 countries, has claimed more than 1 billion stays, and is worth more than $74 billion. It's also no wonder why so many homeowners are willing to rent out their place, as the average host is able to make more than $13,000 a year. The company isn't without its controversies. However, several studies have shown that Airbnb can cause the rent of the surrounding long-term housing to go up. In fact, landlords have held certain properties off of the long-term market because they can charge higher rental rates for those short-term vacation houses. Some landlords have even been accused of evicting tenants to convert their living space into Airbnb. Airbnb also used to become hotspots for parties that would often disrupt the neighborhoods they were in. It got so bad that the company had to enforce a no partying rule in 2022. Now cities like New York, San Francisco, Santa Monica, and Miami have put tight restrictions on Airbnb in their cities. Despite booming in European countries, places like Amsterdam, London, Berlin, Barcelona, and Paris have restrictions on who can and can't rent an Airbnb. Violators, whether they be landlords or customers, can be charged an extremely large fine. And we're going to get straight into this. Hey, Kevin, how are you?
Doing good in yourself.
All right. I have a quick question here. How has the rise in Airbnb affected surrounding communities?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So the way that Airbnb, I think, has affected a lot of communities, I think it's affected more so the average person who's looking to or who is currently renting, right? Airbnbs, like you said, have unfortunately risen. I think the average price that somebody would normally pay for for an average rental. So I think it's displacing a lot of people, and it's causing people who normally stay in one community to have to move into different communities that they normally wouldn't.
Right. So with like the homeless crisis going on in LA County and just struggling that renters find, do you see any other industries being affected by the Airbnb besides renters struggling and like the homeless crisis?
Yeah, I think from like a moral standpoint, I see obviously like the homelessness and displacing a lot of people in neighborhoods. I think it also affects other companies, right? Like other businesses, like the hotel industry, the tourism industry. So I think it's a much larger picture from a business standpoint as well, not just on like a moral standpoint, which is a very important part as well.
Yeah. And so, Anna, for someone who rents out Airbnbs, and although it being a lucrative business and it being oversaturated, do you feel like it's more beneficial for you to continue on being an Airbnb host in the future, or do you think it'll come with more problems?
For me, it was very good. And especially the 2016 is when I started, and I did it to 2019, before the pandemic. And for me, was helping us to pay the house. And we didn't have much problem because we have rules and we were in the house. When you are not in the house, people can do anything. Yeah. But when you are in the house, they respect your rules. It's what it is. In my house, I didn't have many problems. One or two with little kids, coming to the house, rented, and then have fights.
Right.
Couple
That's
those,
pretty typical, yeah.
couple those. But other than that, for me, it was beneficial.
So you see Airbnb still being long-term with it being oversaturated?
For me, it is fine when it's a single house. But when people takes a lot of places and they have so many, and that's what I seen the problems that is coming because they don't have control. And if you're not there, you cannot control. And that's what it happened with the parties. I had clients that I helped them too, and I know that happens.
So Kevin, with you finding people houses and rental properties and things like that, how do you see the rise in Airbnb affected the surrounding cities?
Well, I think it's become a big factor into what, I see it especially in my markets, people looking to buy homes. I think that's one of the bigger pictures or bigger questions that's being asked is, am I able to Airbnb this? Because, to her point, right, it's becoming a lucrative industry for a lot of people.
Our On Point reporter Randy Flores spoke to CSUN economics professor Edward Kong a few days ago about the effects of Airbnb.
Hi Siobhan, yes, I'm here at the College of Business and Economics where I just spoke with Professor Kong, who told me that Airbnb has had a reduction on housing, but it has also created a revitalization for smaller communities. Let's take a look. Airbnb first launched in 2007 under the name Air, Bed and Breakfast, promising consumers a luxury space for a fraction of the price. Now, 16 years after its start, because of the impact on local communities, the company's practices are being put into question. Per the company website, since then, it has amassed more than 4 million hosts, 6 million listings worldwide, and made hosts about $13,000 per year. Its impact is now seen more than ever in local communities as more and more Airbnbs pop up, but long-term housing decreases. Professor Edward Kong, an economics professor at Cal State Northridge, teaches under the David Nazarian College of Business and Economics and focuses on housing-related issues, including Airbnb. He says rent has gone up as more Airbnbs show up because it takes away long-term housing and instead favors short-term renting.
Most of the research studies that have been done on Airbnb's impact, including my own, have found that Airbnb has contributed to increasing house prices and rents. And there's a very straightforward economic theory for that, which is that what Airbnb does is that it makes it easier for owners of housing. And these could be houses that traditionally would have gone to, let's say, a tenant, right, a long-term renter. And it makes it easier for these owners of these properties to, instead of supplying the market for long-term renters, to instead reallocate those housing units into the market for short-term rentals, right, which is serving tourists for the most part instead of local tenants.
Places like this home can be seen fully decked out as they provide homeowners the ability to rent their spaces. With more and more people using Airbnb as a service, places like this apartment have now been placed on short-term leases. The place comes with a refrigerator, a microwave, a washer, and comes fully furnished. This can be an easy way for people to make quick cash, make some money, while also giving a boost to the economy. The negative, though, is that it takes away housing from local communities where it would otherwise be available. But according to Professor Kong, Airbnbs like this one can also have a positive effect on communities.
There has been some research that shows that when you have more Airbnbs in a neighborhood, it actually increases restaurant employment. So it would be good for the nearby restaurants, right? And that makes a lot of sense. My understanding is Airbnb helped certain small towns become discovered as good tourist destinations that people didn't really know about before. Some recent research that I've done with some of my colleagues shows that Airbnb also incentivizes new construction and incentivizes people to upgrade their homes. So those are some benefits too, right?
Professor Kung says Airbnb is here to stay, and it's really up to politicians to balance policies surrounding Airbnb impact on local communities. I'm Randy Flores.
Okay, so the professor brings up a great point that Airbnb listings help bring more jobs to the space and help brings more attractiveness to a city. For a question for both of you guys, do you feel that that is an important factor to the point where we can continue to do Airbnb rentals, or it's affecting it too much? Like, in other words, do you feel like bringing jobs and other attractions is just beneficial, or does it harm?
I think that's a great question. I think it kind of depends on which standpoint you're on, which, where you stand as far as like, somebody living in the city, right? Who is probably looking for employment. I think it's going to benefit them a lot more. So I think in that scenario, they probably would benefit from Airbnbs coming in and having listings in their cities. I think it just depends on the person.
Exactly. For me, it was beneficial. And I do also have a domestic employment agency. And back in 2016, I have my son doing it, and I have another friends of my son doing it. And I was providing a lot of jobs, cleaning jobs for these ladies. So they were having money in the table for themselves. So for me, it was total beneficial. I benefit myself, and I benefit another people who was earning money, working, not asking for money.
Right.
So that's what I see positive. I don't see negative.
Okay, so let's talk about AI. We see AI taking over so many industries. Do you guys foresee AI taking over the Airbnb industry? Because, for you can just open up that app. Someone can give you like a lockbox, a code, and you can enter an Airbnb. So do you think that AI could potentially replace Airbnb hosts? Are you worried about that at all?
I have no idea. I'm not technical. So that is because for me, working with Airbnb and the apps, I was able to manage.
Okay.
But and another, I'm not that savvy. So I would say probably he will be the one who can answer that.
All right, Kevin, what's your take? How do you see Airbnb and AI taking over for the future?
I think they'll come into play a lot more. I think we're already seeing that. I don't remember the last time I got an Airbnb and I physically saw the owner. It's all putting digits into a door lock, a digital door lock now too, doing everything on the app. So I think you're still always going to need the human aspect, right, for like complaints and concerns. But I think AI will probably play a big role down the line as far as just having a lot more control over what's being done, who gets to enter, who's leaving the property, and so on. Yeah.
Right. So are you at all afraid that maybe in the future people renting out houses or people like the Airbnb business, do we foresee it no one needing to own that property? Do you just see it being completely ran by an app?
I think that's where you still need the human intervention. I think that's the piece where no matter how smart robots are, you can't take over that human intervention. Yeah.
The hosting is about in the experience about how people get to. If you just have like a robot, the robot doesn't have feelings. And that's why I was host and I was have a leader because I was super host most of the time. And people were very happy in my house because I did the extra mile to make sure they were comfortable and they were happy. So they're leaving my house with excellent reviews.
Well, excellent report. That's great to hear. Okay, so I wanted to tap in a little bit into like the homeless crisis that's going on in Los Angeles County and with renters finding problems with housing. So do you think that there could be a long-term solution with Airbnb, maybe linking up with the city and providing like housing for homelessness through like through Airbnb? Like, do we see it being less for vacation and more for like the homelessness?
I would sure hope so. I would hope, I think it's always nice to see, big companies of that scale, actually take into consideration what's happening in our cities. I don't know if it'll happen, but I think it'd definitely be nice to see something like that go into effect.
Well, I have seen the hotels taking that.
Yeah.
Few hotels in the valley, they're now for the homeless.
Yeah.
And they're doing. I mean, they're doing for the homeless. They're doing good, but for the hotels, they destroy it. So.
Yeah. So Anna, for you being an Airbnb host, what do you think your number one competition is with hotels?
Well, I don't see the competition because they have really high prices. And that's what make the difference because people a lot of Chinese people came over when we opened Airbnb because they love to travel. And they're respectful. I mean, I don't see the competition because they have their own market. the hotels, they have their own market. And people who are doing Airbnb, and the hostess too, is another people. They have level of less money, so I don't see competition. It's just they make it.
Yeah. So for Kevin, do you kind of rent more to people who are more upfront about like subleasing units for Airbnb, or do you just strictly kind of mainly rent out to people who just are looking for housing? Or do your renters come to you saying, look, Kevin, like I'm struggling finding housing, like what's your insight?
As far as like renter, I don't work I don't do too many rentals, so I can't say I'm like an expert in that area. But I will say within these last few years, I have seen a lot more renters looking to, even renters, which I normally wouldn't think would want to go into that field, asking about like even Airbnb arbitrage, right? Where they don't own the property, but they can still Airbnb it. So I just think it's something that I think everybody's trying to take advantage of while they still can.
While they still can.
Yeah.
Okay, and Anna said that you're not worried at all about saturation with Airbnb, right?
Well, because I'm not a capitalist person that I have a lot of. I just have my house.
Right.
So that's what I do. And what I do, I don't represent any competition for anybody, and I don't feel that too, because the hotels, they're taking over, and the restrictions in the right now, they're terrible. It's not. I don't know. I'm surprised so many people they have, because right now you have to own a house for you to do Airbnb. If you don't have a house, you're not able, because then they get you fined.
Okay, so if you can give us one positive thing about you being an Airbnb host and one negative thing, what do you think that would be?
Well, the positive thing, it is you can earn money, and also I love people. You can get to meet so many people all over the world. So for me, that was a great experience. It has been. And the negative, well, sometimes they don't answer you, and sometimes you have a trouble. They just delete you, or just. I didn't have big trouble, but when it had, no answers.
Okay.
So that's a negative.
No, all good. Okay, so Kevin, have you seen a complete rise since the pandemic in renters and like just people looking for housing in general? Or do you think the market has slowed down with people just looking for housing, period?
No, I think in both areas of the market, the rental and the purchasing side, I think there's definitely a lack of inventory.
Yeah.
And I think we've seen that over the course of these last 2 to 3 years. Yeah, a lot more so, at least.
Okay, and so with Airbnb steadily being on the rise, like you both say, let's say another pandemic comes around and hits, because we know, like you guys took a hit with the pandemic. A lot of people weren't traveling. A lot of people weren't, needing places to stay. So let's say another pandemic comes around. How do you think that you can still support your hosting?
Well, what the way I've been doing is I have, from people who came over in Airbnb, I still have a person for over 3 years and a half with me. So people, when it's happy with you, they stay. They don't move. So she came from another state, and she is like my daughter now.
Okay, you are watching On Point, a news and public affairs show ran by student journalists here at California State University, Northridge.
Great having you.
Incredible women.
I wish they had those kind of cool careers for women when we were growing up.
Thank you.
So in this flashback, we're all the same age?
Yeah.
So, what does everyone want to be when they grow up? Yes.
I want to make immersive video games.
Ah, love the arcade.
If I say 2 jobs, do I get extra credit?
No.
I want to revolutionize 3D printing.
3D, like those glasses we were in the movies.
I want to analyze data from the cloud.
I just want to get my hands unstuck. Oh,
Yep.
I want to be a meteor.
You mean meteorologist?
No.
That's great, Al. Follow your dreams.
For the record, I was a baby in the 70s.
Feel the beat of nature at a park or forest near you. Find a forest and music inspired by nature at discovertheforest.org.
This is On Point, a news and public affairs show run by student journalists here at California State University Northridge. Let's tap back into the real estate market and how Airbnb has affected that. So we kind of tapped on a little bit of the minor issues. Any major issues you foresee seeing in the future with the market and Airbnb?
It's hard to say. Major issues with Airbnb. I mean, I think the biggest one, just coming from like a moral standpoint, is again it pushing people in our communities, pushing them out on like a massive scale. Not so much like on like a mom and pop scale, but on when corporations come in, I think that's when you start displacing people, and I think that's when you start seeing like gentrification coming in, displace people even more so to the point where they can't afford their own neighborhoods where they've
right, which
lived
is
in.
happening extremely a lot right now in LA County. Yeah, a lot of just beautification is what they call it of cities that have been entering.
Yeah.
So where are you at ethically as a realtor? Like, if you see it becoming so much of a problem, what's your take ethically?
I think ethically, morally, I would say I see the issue. I see what it'll eventually become. But I think to some point too, I also understand why some people looking to do Airbnb prefer Airbnb, because it's a lot less risky than looking for somebody in a long-term renter, right? So I see both standpoints. I think ethically, morally, I see it might side more so with that, with hoping it doesn't scale massively for that reason. But I can also see the benefits as to why some landlords and corporations decide Airbnb is the way to go.
Okay, and what about you, Anna? How do you feel morally and ethically with renters struggling to find housing and prices are increasing because Airbnb is saturated in units and the homeless crisis in LA County?
Well, those are mostly people looking to the beaches. I think that's where they are getting more into it. But in the city, I don't see that much of the problem, because people is coming to look into have a beautiful place on the beach, and that's why the regulations are right now. Yeah. Because I don't know you had seen those, but the regulations in the city are really strict. Mm-hmm. So, and they are already taking over. So I don't think there's that many people like before. I know before it was a ton of those, but now, and also Airbnb is not giving the whole year.
So
anymore.
So no more long-term leases.
No, they only have like 6 months to give a chance to the rent.
Okay, any reason why that changed?
Their city.
Oh, okay.
So it's already from the 1990s. The city start taking over. So that's what I'm surprised that they giving those big numbers, because they are not. I even have clients who had maybe 5 or 6 places, and now they only have 1 because of the city.
Okay, so how do you think that will affect you?
Let me give you my point of view, because I know where you're coming from. Affects me. I mean, the pandemic affects us, a lot of people who are doing Airbnb, because you have to stop. For me, I was lucky because I did stop that year at the end of 19, because I had my son who needed a place to stay. So that, and then it came the pandemic, so thanks God, I did that. But I still have 1 person who's still with me, and she's not moving anywhere.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. When you build relationship, that's what I was saying. When you open your house, people come to your house, you open, it's your home.
Right.
You open to relationships, and I am very open to relationships. So that's why, for me, it's a happy environment to make it, but I know it was a problem for people like homeless that getting less places to live. And I understand, and I understand his point, like moral. Moral is to do the right thing, to help what they need. They need people.
Okay, so where do you see Airbnb in 10 years for both of you guys? Let's hear from you, Kevin. Where do you see Airbnb in the next 10 years?
I think it's Airbnb in the next 10 years. I think it's going to be a lot more regulated. We've already seen that in the last year. But I think it'll still be around. it's like the Uber of
the Uber of like taxis, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
it's
always
now.
innovating.
Yeah.
Everything's always innovating. It's always changing. So we don't see any new innovations coming up for Airbnb. We think it'll just stay the same for the next.
Regulated. It started in San Francisco, and then they came to Los Angeles. That's what I say. It's not like before. Now they are regulated. They're regulated. You cannot do a lot of stuff anymore.
Okay, so what made you want to get into Airbnb hosting, Anna?
Well, one of my sons, who was the one who said, "Mom, why don't you do?" Because my son moved out, and then I had 2 rooms in the house.
Okay.
And he said, "Mom, why don't you have?" And I know my papa is not that good with people, but you do. Come on. And I said, "Well, let's give it a try." And we gave it a try, and my husband liked it. And he's not a very people person.
Right.
But he did.
But then he started to see the revenue run in, and he's
He
like,
saw
yes,
the
let's
revenue,
continue.
and he saw also to meeting people.
Yeah.
Because we have great, and we still have great friends from England. We have from China, because we did have that connection. That's why for me it has been positive.
Okay, so let's say someone came to you. So from your perspective as an Airbnb host, and they said, you know what, I'm struggling to find rent XYZ. Like, what advice would you give them? Because, you know, Anna, you're kind of on the other side of the spectrum from renters looking for housing. So you're kind of someone that's like taking up some units or housing space for people to rent. So kind of what would you tell someone renting as who's really struggling to find housing, and you being an Airbnb host?
How do they find a place to? It's hard. It's really hard, because I know for some people, they don't have the money, and that's why I even have clients that have moved from Los Angeles to another states.
Yeah.
Because it's less expensive.
Okay.
So that's why in millionaires, people who had a house, $1 million, and she said no, LA is too costly. So that's what I'm saying. It's just moving from here.
Do you think that problem would still be there if Airbnb wasn't here?
I don't think Airbnb has the whole input in there.
Okay.
I mean, it has part of it, but it's not the whole. And it's not the solution to take Airbnb out.
Okay. And so for you, Kevin, what really made you hop into real estate? Because obviously it wasn't to help people find housing to rent for Airbnbs. Of course not. So what really was your motivation to become a real estate agent?
Honestly, to buy real estate myself, eventually buy like multifamilies and potentially Airbnb them too, Airbnb them long-term rentals. Yeah, but just to be in the mix of it all in the real estate world.
Okay, so we all see it still being a lucrative business. We all still see it being around.
Very regulated. What I see is regulations are there.
Okay, and we thank both of you very much for your time and your perspective on this topic. And that's a wrap for today's show. We will see you guys next week, same time, same place. I'm your host again, Siobhan Peart, and this is On Point, a news and public affairs show run by student journalists here at California State University, Northridge.